All right, so Grady Judd is back at the podium, and this time I think he's going after gang members. All right, so real quick, I wonder if these press conferences are open to the public. Probably not, because at this point, Grady Judd is a full-blown celebrity at this point, so they probably not, but let's get into it.
Attorney for the Middle District, Roger Handberg. Of course, our state attorney, Brian Haas. The FBI special agent in charge out of Tampa, Matthew Fodor. And, of course, Assistant Chief Steve Pacheco from the Lakeland Police Department. And let me give you a little history. We have been working together with a task force going after gangs, and we've been remarkably successful. And we've been remarkably successful because we simply have the best state attorney in Brian Haas and his team, and our U.S. attorney, Roger Handberg. And what Roger said was, hey, anything that spiders out, we'll take it to the federal system. Anything where we can get more time, we'll take it to the federal system. So what we found with our U.S. Attorney's Office is they are remarkable partners. So the investigation goes on, and we're chasing these gangsters here. This is Tyler Jacob, Jaquarius Green, and Daquan Carey. Interestingly enough, I want you to think about this. Tyler's 24, Jaquarius is 25, and Daquan is 24. They're young, real young. Yet he's got a total of 37 criminal charges already.
How is that possible, bro, to have 37 and you're still in your 20? How do you have, oh my, wait a minute. How does the system even allow that to even happen, bro? That's insane. Like, I know when they go to pull his stuff on a computer, it go from screen to screen to screen to screen. When you bringing up somebody charges like that, that's crazy. I don't even know how you even get to that point.
Yet he's got a total of 37 criminal charges already, 17 felonies, 20 misdemeanors. Jaquarius has got 9 felonies and 10 misdemeanors. And Daquan's got 33 felonies and 23 misdemeanors. Now, there haven't been convictions on all of those because a lot of the victims don't cooperate. Why don't the victims cooperate? Because they're scared of them. So in 2022, working with the FBI, the different police departments, and our state partners, we started going after these folks. In 2022, we were chasing Tyler Jacob. We were pursuing him, we stopped him, and guess what we found? A handgun, rifle ammo, and he's a convicted felon. But what else we found was what really got us to where we are today. We found a printer, blank checks. We saw where 40 businesses had been victimized, 8 individuals, and debit cards. So we stopped Jaquarius Green. We're looking for him on gun charges, obviously state charges. What did we find? Blank checks, blank check paperwork, debit cards. And then Daquan. We had attempted first-degree murder charges on him for a shooting in Lake Wells and Waverly. And guess what? Guess what we found? When we arrested him, we fought with him. Our deputies put their life on the line, and they got a gun out of his waistband. What else did he have? Checks, credit cards. And so we saw that, hey, we've got the beginning of a large operation here. Now, I must tell you, we're already working with the state attorney's office and are still on the state charges. We asked Mr. Handberg, the most fantastic U.S. attorney that I've ever worked with in the Middle District, and I've done this my entire adult life. And he and his team were eager to help. Now, he's going to give you all the details. I'm going to introduce him to you in just a minute. But in addition to these pictures you see here, where these people emanated through the state system. There are 19 others that, as a result of our work together, and my detectives, I can't brag enough on them in special investigations, all of my detectives, but we work really, really hard with the U.S. Attorney's Office and the State Attorney's Office. There's 19 others that were directly indicted and taken to the marshals by our teams. Their pictures aren't here today. Do you know why? Because of federal rules in Washington, D.C. that prohibit our U.S. Attorney from telling you, the people in the community, who these bad people are that are victimizing you. So the reality is we can show you these because these came through the state system. The others went directly to the federal system. Now,
see, that's the type of thing that be making you want to think that, you know, they don't want you to know, or things be happening because it's profitable or for other reasons that we may or may not know about. You know, this whole system and how things are set up, fam, it's got to be fixed, bro. But no one will fix it. It just keeps running the same way. And when you see that happen, you have to think like, okay, who's making money from this? In order for things not to change, somebody has to be profiting from this. It just irks you.
As they show up in the future, I can assure you that you'll see their pictures sooner or later. Now, I don't often, because I don't like to market for these gangs, but I'm going to remind you, these guys were kind of instrumental in this gang that they called the Trap Boys. In fact, Tyler Jacob was known as the Money Man. He kind of perfected this scheme, and he was teaching it, and he was bringing people in. And Mr. Handberg is going to talk about that. But guess what? We flushed the Trap Boys. They ceased to exist.
Yo, he got a toilet. I was looking at it, I was like, what is that? That is a toilet to go with the phrase, we flushed the Trap Boys. And he got their pictures on the lid of the toilet, bro. I'm telling you, Grady Judd is different, fam. He different.
They're in the toilet and down in the sewer. And we're going after their accomplices now. There's more flushes for this toilet. And you're about to hear about some of the flushes, and there's an ongoing investigation. So brace up when you want to victimize people. You not only have the best state attorney in the state of Florida after you, but you also have the best U.S. attorney and all of the investigative resources from the FBI to local law enforcement. Mr. Henberg.
Well, thank you very much, Sheriff, for those kind words and for your introduction, and thank you for your support, for your leadership, and in particular for your vision in establishing the Violent Crime Task Force here in Polk County. It was about a year and a half ago when Sheriff Judd brought us all together regarding the formation of the task force. And I made this task force a personal priority of mine. And I assigned some of my office's very best and finest prosecutors to work on it. The concept is straightforward. On a regular basis, federal prosecutors from my office and assistant state attorneys from State Attorney Haas's office meet with investigators on the task force to review cases for potential prosecution. In identifying those cases, the task force uses the very best possible information so that our prosecutors can then focus their efforts on the most violent offenders. And once our prosecutors are focused on those violent offenders, the prosecutors use every available statutory tool to dismantle violent groups. And that's simply what this task force has done over the past year and a half. During that time period, more than 50 defendants have been prosecuted by my office in federal court. Those offenses have included large-scale drug trafficking, possession of firearms and machine guns, money laundering, robbery, carjacking, bank fraud, and various shooting-related offenses. One of the primary focuses of the task force's work has been on identifying and dismantling any criminal gang that operates here in Polk County. My office's work on gang prosecutions follows two guiding principles. First, our investigations with our law enforcement partners and our counterparts at the State Attorney's Office, those investigations are thorough, they're methodical, they're comprehensive, they are meticulous, and they are unrelenting. When we find a violation of federal law that my office can prove in federal court that will assist in the dismantlement of a criminal organization in Polk County, my prosecutors are going to charge those violations in federal court. Second, my office is not going to limit the individuals who are charged in federal court to gang members only. If we find evidence of a federal violation committed by someone who conspires with or assists a gang member in the commission of a federal crime, we are going to pursue those charges in federal court, even though the person is not a gang member himself or herself. The case I'm here to talk about today is a great example of the comprehensive approach that the task force is taking to gang prosecutions here in Polk County. As you heard Sheriff Judd say already, the case started with traffic stops. One of those occurred on June 23, 2022, when deputies with the Polk County Sheriff's Office responded to a call for service at a Chevron gas station. The person they were looking for was Tyler Jacob. You heard the sheriff say he was the money man for the Trap Boys. The Trap Boys are a violent gang that operate in Central Florida. They're involved in armed robberies, narcotics, weapons violations, burglaries. On June 23rd, deputies were looking for Jacob. A deputy found him. And you're going to hear this more than once. Jacob did not comply. He attempted to flee. He was not successful. He was apprehended, and deputies conducted a search of his vehicle. And what they found was probably not what they expected. They found numerous fraudulent checks. They found checks that had been returned as altered. They found personal information in other people that was written in a notebook. They found 27 bank debit cards in other people's names. And they found...
I'm telling y'all now, bro, if y'all don't have some type of alert system, security system on your account that alerts you for fraudulent activity, you need to step into this century, bro. This decade. I'm serious. At this point, it's happening so frequently now that I don't like... Get you a good bank that is able to spot something or just odd activity, and they automatically lock your account, and you have to verify whether through text or calling. It may seem like an inconvenience sometimes, but trust me, it's worth it. Then have to go through all the craziness that you could have to go through, bro. We've heard the horror stories. Like somebody being picked up with tons and tons of other people's identification and information, and like, yeah, bro. Get you some type of bank. I'll put in the comment section as well too, bro. Suggest some good banks that do that. Have good security systems.
A computer and a cell phone. All of these are tools of a check fraud operation. The Polk County Sheriff's Office realized that immediately, and they started an investigation into Jacob's check fraud. What they determined was that the checks that Jacob had in his possession belonged to businesses that had reported fraud on their checking accounts, and that those fraudulent checks had been deposited into the same accounts associated with nearly all of those 27 debit cards. Polk County deputies also determined that the personal information written on the notebook paper was stolen. It belonged to dead people, to people who lived in assisted living facilities, and to individuals who were mentally incompetent. And when deputies executed a search warrant of Jacob's computer, they found check writing software and copies of fraudulent checks. This is where the task force comes in. The Polk County Sheriff's Office teamed up with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Their goal, simply put, was to conduct a comprehensive investigation to dismantle the Trap Boys, to stop them from using check fraud to support themselves, and hold accountable anyone who assisted them in these crimes.
Yo, these criminals be smart. I didn't even know you could get a hold to a check cashing software. These jokers, if they just channel their mind to something else, these jokers would be running the country. That's how smart. If you're able to figure out how to get somebody's information, how to get a check writing software, how to do this, manipulate, scheme, and do all, bro, come on, fam. You should be investing in a stock market, breaking down companies.
Working together, the Polk County Sheriff's Office and the FBI uncovered a massive check fraud ring. Over the course of more than 2 years, from July 2021 to November 2023, Jacob and at least 19 conspirators worked together to defraud banks, credit unions, and businesses throughout Central Florida, including ones located in Winter Haven, Auburndale, Riverview, Kissimmee, Lakeland, Tampa, and Miami. So far, the Sheriff's Office and the FBI have identified over 200 businesses, 26 banks, and 3 credit unions that were the victims of this conspiracy. No business was off limit, and no organization was spared. Organizations that were defrauded included insurance companies, law firms, construction companies, auto shops, public school districts, colleges, and state agencies. This conspiracy had 4 basic parts. First, conspirators, they either stole checks from businesses or they used online databases or other sources to locate banking information for those businesses. Second, conspirators would either alter the stolen checks or they would use some of that information they had acquired about the businesses to write fictitious checks. Third, the conspirators would provide those checks to other conspirators to be deposited. Fourth, the conspirators would attempt to quickly withdraw the proceeds from those fraudulent checks as soon as they were available. Jacob was the leader of this conspiracy, and he recruited many other conspirators. Some of them were members of the Trap Boys, such as Cornelius Campbell and Tre'Cavious Green. Others were accomplices who weren't members of the Trap Boys, but who willingly allowed the fraudulent checks to be deposited into their accounts and who shared in some of the proceeds from these crimes. Some conspirators were people who Jacob met on social media. You heard that right, people he met on social media, enlisting their help and using their bank accounts to receive deposits of these fraudulent checks. The conspirators weren't always successful. At times, banks flagged the fraudulent checks and froze those accounts. Many times, however, they were, and the fraudulent funds were successfully deposited and the money moved to other accounts prior to the banks becoming aware that they had been defrauded. Jacob paid his conspirators a cut of the fraudulently obtained proceeds, and during the course of this conspiracy, Jacob and his conspirators deposited approximately $50,000 a week in fraudulent checks. $50,000 a week in fraudulent checks, which resulted in most weeks of more than $10,000 in successful receipt of proceeds. But not any longer. The dismantlement of this organization started exactly where it should have, with its leader. On January 23rd of this year, detectives with the Polk County Sheriff's Office working with the FBI executed a search warrant at Jacob's residence. I mentioned before that Jacobs isn't always compliant, and he wasn't compliant that day. He refused to come outside for 30 minutes. He even knocked down a drone that was sent inside the house. Once law enforcement was able to safely get inside the residence, they found that Jacob's residence had some of the tools of the trade that he had used in his check fraud operation. Investigators found checkbooks, 3 printers, a scanner, a shredding machine, an ink cartridge, and financial documents with the name and personal identifying information of victims. During the search, investigators found shredding on both floors of the residence, documents that had been shredded. They found a shredding machine that was full and that had so much in it that it was jammed at the top. Additionally, law enforcement found that there was something in the washing machine that had been started. What was found in there was a box of checks, as Jacob literally was attempting to wash away some of the evidence against him. Jacob's efforts at obstructing the investigation continued as he was in jail. Jacob attempted to enlist the assistance of an ex-girlfriend in an effort to get that person to falsely claim that ammunition found at his residence belonged to her instead of to him. Jacob's efforts were successful in only one thing, which was increasing the federal charges that were brought against him. Jacob committed conspiracy. He was federally charged with that. Jacob committed bank fraud. He was federally charged with 16 counts of that. Jacob committed aggravated identity theft. Jacob was federally charged with that. Jacob committed destruction of evidence. He was federally charged with that. Jacob committed witness tampering. He was federally charged with that. And he has been convicted of all of those federal crimes. Jacob has pleaded guilty to those crimes in his pending sentence in Tampa federal court. Jacob is...
What type of sentence y'all think he see for for those crimes, bro? When you start messing with the banking system, I don't like your chances in that, fam. As when you start playing with people's identity, conspiracy, witness tampering, all this type of stuff you could be hit with, I'd be surprised he get anything less than 20. Anything less than 20, I'd be surprised.
Was not alone. Our goal was to do and prosecute as many of the trap boys as we can to dismantle that organization, and 2 others have pled guilty to federal offenses. Jacavius Green and Daquan Carey have pleaded guilty to federal firearms offenses, and they're also pending sentencing in federal court in Tampa. And the task force has dismantled the bank fraud conspiracy. A federal grand jury has indicted 19 of Jacob's conspirators for their role. These defendants include many of the conspirators who used their bank accounts to deposit fraudulent checks as part of the scheme. Our message has been clear throughout this investigation. Anyone who participated in this conspiracy will be held accountable in federal court for their crimes. This investigation is a great example of how local and federal investigators are able to effectively work together to protect our community. Investigations of this breadth and scope, well, they're not easy and they're not always quick. These cases require meticulous work by excellent investigators to put together the evidence that will support prosecutions to combat violent crime. And that is exactly what we have with the team that's been assembled here. Over the last year, a team of detectives with the Polk County Sheriff's Office and special agents with the Federal Bureau of Investigation have worked hand in hand together in uncovering this conspiracy and developing the charges that led to the federal indictment in this case. This has required a lot of long work, a lot of hard work, and a lot of long hours. The investigators on this case have executed more than 50 state and federal search warrants. They have analyzed hundreds of bank statements, spoken to many victims, and reviewed countless text message communications in which members of the scheme discussed how to execute it and avoid law enforcement detection. This is another successful investigation by the task force. I want to commend the Polk County Sheriff's Office, the Lakeland Police Department, and the FBI for their work and excellent work on every case that's investigated by the task force. And I want to commend my friend, State Attorney Brian Haas and his office. We have such an excellent partner in the State Attorney's office here in Polk County. And I want to thank State Attorney Haas for being here today and for his leadership and partnership on these cases and the many others that we work together. As the United States Attorney for the Middle District of Florida, I have the privilege of serving as the Chief Federal Law Enforcement Officer for 35 counties in Florida. Since taking office 3 years ago, I have prioritized working with our local, state, and federal law enforcement partners to aggressively investigate and federally prosecute perpetrators of violent crime. This focused effort has resulted in an increase of more than 75% in my office's violent crimes and firearms prosecutions over the past 3 years. The work done by the task force here in Polk County is a great example of the successes that we see when everyone works together. And our work is not over yet. We will continue to partner together to keep our community safe here in Polk County. Thank you, and with that, I will turn it over to State Attorney Brian Haas.
Yeah, because they probably only just scratched the surface of that whole type of operation with the fraudulent checks and of the businesses and the elderly. Oh my gosh, bro, check on your elderly family members, man. People are out here taking advantage of them, bro. And they just go up to them or be at those senior buildings, man, befriending them and You know the elderly are lonely, so they befriend people, man, and these people intentions don't be good at all, bro. Check on your people, man. But yeah, this stuff has to be just scratching the surface of them taking down that gang. They probably learned it from somebody else. So they probably got a lot of people they still looking at that they ain't talking about right now.
Thank you, Roger. And I just want to start by saying, you know, I started as a prosecutor almost 25 years ago, and in my time doing this job, both as an assistant state attorney, as a state attorney, I have never experienced the level of cooperation and professionalism and just support that we have with our U.S. Attorney Roger Hamburg. It is just remarkable. And when he says that he's going to do something, he does it. And his outreach and his collaboration is just incredible. So I'm honored to be a part of this task force, and certainly with Sheriff Judge leadership and all of our law enforcement partners. You know, I think one of the things that's pretty impactful is if you think about the victims in these types of cases. A lot of times when you hear about gangs, you think, well, violence in the streets or drugs, but this is an example of the impact that gangs can have on a community. And if you think about all the different victims, the banks, the businesses, the individuals, and that's when it brings it home to us that this is a fight that absolutely is worth fighting. And we know that these criminals are going to work extra, extra hard, and it's our job in law enforcement to work harder and to be one step ahead of them. And when you hear, well, checks and financial things, this is about as dangerous as it gets, because if you look at all of the different facts in these cases with the arrests and tracking the folks down, these law enforcement officers are absolutely putting their lives on the line to fight this gang and to bring them to justice, because they don't want to be caught, and they're going to keep working to try to get to that next crime. And you can see assembled before you today are partners that are not worried about jurisdiction or worried about getting credit. We are worried about protecting our community and bringing these gangs down one by one, and we're never going to stop. We're going to keep going after this as long as we possibly can, and we will. So I will turn it over to Special Agent in Charge Matthew Fodor from the FBI, and he's going to have a few remarks. Thank you.
Okay. Oops, sorry, Brian. Good morning. Thank you, Brian. As you've heard, clearly the partnership is very impressive in this county. I want to personally thank Brian, Chief Pacheco, Roger, Grady, and SSRA Supervisory Special Agent Mike Glass here. He's flanked off to my right. So under his leadership, this case got done. So appreciate your leadership, sir. I'm Matt Fodor, Special Agent in Charge of the FBI Tampa Field Office. When it comes to tackling violent crime, the FBI focuses on building collaboration and strengthening our partnerships with federal, state, and local law enforcement to maximize the impact. Our goal is not to just arrest violent criminals, but to build cases that cut into the capabilities of criminal enterprises. And that's exactly what we, Polk County Sheriff's Office and Lakeland Police, did in this investigation. We joined forces with the U.S. Attorney's Office to secure 19 federal indictments for members of the Trap Boys, a gang we believe is responsible for numerous robberies and drive-by shootings throughout Lakeland and Winter Haven. The gang funded its criminal enterprise not only by selling guns and drugs. We allege that the primary source of income for the Trap Boys was check fraud schemes and various other financial fraud. More than 200 victims are linked to their schemes. Most of the victims are small business owners from the Central Florida area. This is what we are up against these days. Gang members who are tech savvy, who know how to navigate the dark web to learn fraud schemes that can provide them with the money they want, but with less risk. We're here today to send a message to these criminals who think they can hide behind a keyboard. Law enforcement is equally as innovative and skilled. We have the resources such as the Safe Streets Task Forces and a knowledgeable workforce to include forensic accountants and cyber experts. We won't stop there. The FBI is a tenacious agency and full of hardworking professionals who will continue to work together with our partners to expose these crimes. And when we do, the criminals can look forward to significant federal prison sentences. With continued coordination and collaboration between the federal, state, and local law enforcement agencies, we will root out violent crime from your neighborhoods, and we will ensure justice is served. Thank you. Turn over to Chief Pacheco for a few words.
Now, this is like the fourth person besides Grady Judd to come to the podium, bro. This is why I say I don't see them dudes get no less than like 20, especially the main guy that they got caught. Bro, when you got this many agencies involved, yeah. Ain't no way, bro. You just walking away with a slap on the wrist or a little 5 to 10. No, bro. They trying to put you out of here.
Good morning. It's Steve Pacheco, Assistant Chief of Police at the Lakeland Police Department. Just want to thank everybody for being here today, and we're proud as an agency to be a part of this task force. The Lakeland Police Department has been a part of many task forces since the early 90s, and this is just one that we're involved in now. Being a part of a task force is really a benefit for the community. What it means for the community is just we're able to be a force multiplier in our investigative efforts to bring cases like this, to a conclusion and have an impact for the community. Over 20-some suspects in this case are now going to be in jail and hopefully in prison, and won't be affecting the many victims that they've chosen, or the businesses that they've chosen to be victims in our community. And those are the ones that are affected. So we appreciate being a part of the task force, and I want to thank our task force officers that were a part of this case and joined forces with the Sheriff's Office and the FBI to bring this case to conclusion, because it's definitely going to have an impact, I think, in the Central Florida area for many years to come. But we'll move on to the next one, because there'll probably be another organization that wants to take up the slack and continue on. So, but thank you on the behalf of the Lakeland Police Department. I appreciate everybody's efforts.
Okay, folks, there's still those out there that have not been indicted yet that are under investigation. So if you looked at this and went, whoo, I avoided it. No, you didn't. You're up next, okay? So we're coming after you. And you think about this. You're looking at the U.S. Attorney, the FBI, the State Attorney, the Sheriff, and the different police departments. We're coming after you. You're going to behave in this community. You're going to quit victimizing people, or you're going to prison for a very long time. And I really like it when Mr. Handberg prosecutes you in Tampa, Florida. And then, hey, it's a nice time to wake up at a prison in Nebraska, okay? So that's your next stop. So are there any questions for the team here?
Mr. Fodor kind of alluded to it, but he said they get the money they want at less risk, because I was struck by, we usually come here and talk about drugs, and drugs weren't mentioned. So how unique is this when it comes to gang behavior?
Well, quite frankly, it shows the next generation of criminals. And the reality is, we expected, because these guys here are hardcore, dangerous street gang members that run and gun and shoot each other. And when we immediately noticed that they're into white-collar crime, Tyler is intelligent, and he's the teacher. He is the one that was putting all of this together, and he was the coordinator. And he was trying to teach these guys. Now, a couple of these guys are not near as tech-savvy as Tyler is. But from there, it went to this 19 that Mr. Handberg appropriately indicted with the grand jury. But it's a wake-up call for everyone. These are now not only multi-generational criminals from the age perspective, but they're multifunctional criminals. They'll run and gun and shoot with you at night, and then they'll get on their computers and steal stuff in the daytime. But think about it. The whole world is on the computer system and the different webs. So it's obvious.
And the whole world's information is on the system. That's where the problem is. Too much of our information and our personal stuff is on the web. Not by our liking or not by us doing it. We didn't do it. It's our information being sold. It's a problem. It's a problem, man. I'm still old school in the sense of I don't like putting my information everywhere. You can say, man, you gotta step into the times, man. I'm still apprehensive about some things I'm entering my information into. Yeah, bro, like, it take a while for me.
Yes, they're going to be there too.
If I could actually add to that, so it is something that we have seen, and it really, to me, shows the benefit of a task force like this. There was a time, I would say probably 7 to 10 years ago, where there was a number of gangs who were doing what we called stolen identity refund fraud. They were stealing people's identity and submitting tax returns, false tax returns, and getting that money. We also have seen it with COVID fraud. So one of the priorities of my office has been the prosecution and investigation of COVID fraud, and we've done over 100 cases during the time that I've had a chance to be in this role. And some of them are gang members who think that they can go on the internet, submit a false claim for a COVID loan, and no one's going to be watching or looking. And the message that we have on all of these is, we are watching and we are looking, and especially if someone is a part of a criminal organization, it's going to be something we prioritize. And on the COVID fraud loans, we have a 10-year statute of limitations, and we're talking about records, that are paper records, that are electronic records that we have the ability to keep looking at. And so we're going to continue to make those cases a priority. But it is something that we do see gangs do as they try to diversify the ways they get money beyond just drugs. And this is the benefit of the task forces, because we've got all of that expertise. It's a one-stop shop they've set up here in Polk County.
What advice do you give the community and businesses on how to protect themselves against people like this? I mean, because they're hiding, like you said, they're hiding behind a keyboard. How do you protect yourself?
Well, I think one thing that any business needs to do is they need to figure out what information is out there about them on the internet, because some of these checks were stolen. And a lot of these schemes, the perpetrators will morph how they do it. And maybe at first it's stealing the mail and finding checks and altering checks. But the internet is a treasure trove of information about all of us, and it's a treasure trove of information about businesses. And businesses need to be mindful if they have any of their bank account information that's just a keyboard stroke away from being found. So one of the things I would suggest any business to do is to take a look at what they have publicly available out there, because that's some of the information that this conspiracy was able to use to make these fictitious checks.
Can you speak a little bit more on how social media played a role? Did they reach out to friends and family? Did they reach out to strangers?
Sometimes there were people they knew. Sometimes there were people they didn't know. So some of the evidence that's been acquired in the case are some of these social media contacts were people who were not otherwise, affiliated with this organization. And these people, the internet gives, people the ability to reach out and touch people and to interact with people they never would have had a chance to meet with, 50 years ago. So some of the people they knew, some of the people they didn't know. But the message is, for anyone who's in that situation, if someone asks you to do something strange, like, hey, here's a check, we need you to cash it and immediately put it in your account and then move the money, that is fraud. And you are putting yourself on the hook because it's your bank account. You are the one who's going to be on that bank surveillance footage, walking into the bank, depositing that check. We're going to have all of the tools that we need, and that's why this investigation continues. If there's anyone else that we find who participated in that way, we're going to try to hold them accountable.
Let me ask.
That sound like those people that used to be in your comment sections. Turn $500 into $4,000 or $5,000. All you need is a bank account. Remember those? You don't see them too much no more. I think Instagram kind of cracked down on it, but it was at one point in time, bro, you couldn't scroll and look in somebody's comment section without seeing several of those jokers, bro. That's what this sounds like.
With that question,
yes.
Is there anyone who was contacted by social media that is being viewed as a victim rather than as a co-conspirator, or were all these people, were people participating unwillingly in this scheme?
I guess I would phrase that, I would answer that a little bit differently. So your question is, are there people who maybe have participated in this who are unknowing? I'm a little bit of a hard charger when it comes to the prosecution of white-collar crime, and I think if somebody gives you a check to to deposit in your account with the express purpose of depositing it and removing the money as quickly as possible, that is more than enough notice that you are engaged in a fraud. So I wouldn't say we have unwitting participants who are out there. I just say we have people who are still left to be charged.
I think I understand how the banks lost money. Did these tile companies, auto shop businesses, it was checks from them, so they lost money?
So one of the things that will happen in these federal prosecutions is we will determine the amount of restitution that is owed. And so I can't give you the precise answer to that yet. I can tell you based on my experience, I mostly in the past would prosecute white-collar and public corruption cases, and a lot of times the banks would be the ones responsible for that loss. But it is always possible that a victim, a business, might have a loss as well. And they have other losses, beyond the amount of the check. I mean, every time this happens to a business, just imagine everything that business or that an individual has to do if your information is compromised in this way. These cases aren't just a limited impact on the victims of whatever that dollar amount. These things have reverberations for these businesses that are going to last for some time. And I don't ever want us to lose sight of that. That may not be something we can quantify for restitution purposes, but it is one of the reasons that really motivates us to do these cases, because the victims in these cases are victimized monetarily, but they're victimized in other ways as well.
Prosecuting them federally, how many years are they potentially facing?
So for the bank fraud violation, that's up to 30 years in federal prison. Their sentence will be determined once they're convicted, and then it will be determined by the court at sentencing. So no one has been sentenced in this case yet. We've had 3 individuals who have pled guilty and are pending sentencing, and then the others are pending trial.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.